They have identified elephant corridors throughout the country in the famous book called Right to Passage. WTA has gone further ahead by physically acquiring 25 acres of land in Wayanad and handing over to the Forest Department for further maintenance of this wildlife corridor. I hope this commendable work of WTI will be taken note of by other stakeholders and they will be contributing to the conservation this way also.
Court is one of the most important corridors in India. It connects two very large populations of elephants in the Brahmagiris and the Nilgiris. There were a substantial number of households living right within this corridor. And I'm very happy that donors like the World Trust, Elephant Family and IUC Netherlands came forward at that stage and supported us.
കാട്ടി വരുന്നുണ്ടായി, കടുവ വരുന്നുണ്ടായി, മാന വരുന്നുണ്ടായി, പുലി വന്നിട്ട് കിടക്കുന്നുണ്ടായി വീട്ടിൽ മുമ്പാകത്ത്.
കുറേ വർഷമായി അവിടെ നിൽക്കുന്നേ. പിന്നെ കുറച്ചൊക്കെ ആട് കൂടെ നടക്കണമെന്നേ ഉണ്ടായുള്ളൂ.
കാട്ടുപോത്ത്, പുലി, കടുവ തുടങ്ങിയ മൃഗങ്ങളുടെ ഒരു ആവാസ മേഖലയാണിത്. അപ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് കാണാൻ കഴിയും ഒരുപാട് മൃഗങ്ങൾ ഇറങ്ങിയതിൻ്റെ കാൽപ്പാടുകളും അവരുടെ വിസർജ്യങ്ങളെല്ലാം നമുക്ക് കാണാൻ സാധിക്കും ഇവിടെ.
वन्य प्राणियों की रक्षा कौन करेगा?
New Delhi, the capital of India, is a notorious transit point for the illegal wildlife trade in India and South Asia. We will be following 3 undercover wildlife crime investigators on their journey to arrest a suspect.
Thousands of monitor lizards are getting killed and we are not aware about. Technically speaking, a monitor lizard is as protected as a tiger or a leopard or a rhino in India. Monitor lizards are killed for its organ and it is sold in the market as Hatta Jodi.
Self-proclaimed astrologers sell Hatta Jodi as the sacred root of a plant that brings in health, wealth and happiness to their owners.
There is no sexual dimorphism in monitor lizards. Male and female looks the same. So once they know that it is a male, they put the monitor lizard on top of fire and you burn that area and arch it backward so the penis comes out and they chop it off and sell it as Hatta Jodi. When we looked at online, almost all the leading websites were selling it. We found some listing which was like 6,000-7,000 rupees a piece and it was getting delivered in UK and US.
बाकी जेन्युइन है अगर
लेकिन जेन्युइन है मतलब एनिमल प्रोडक्ट ही है पक्की बात है
नहीं वो एकदम उसकी गारंटी है उसकी गारंटी हमारी है कि जेन्युइन है भाई चलो हो गया you have to position ourselves.
Those people who are actually claiming that they can predict your future for 10 years, they don't even know that in next 24 hours probably they won't get arrested.
ये क्या चीज है? पतंजलि बनी है। क्या बात कर रहे हो? आपके यहाँ से मिल रहा है, आप कह रहे हो कि मुझे नहीं पता क्या मतलब बना है? सर हत्ता जोड़ी कहते हैं सर। हत्ता जोड़ी कहते हैं, किस चीज का बनता है? ये पेड़ का रहता है, कोई जड़ किसी पेड़ का नहीं है। आप देखिए, साधु बनने की कोशिश मत करिए, इसको सबको सीज करिएगा।
The self-proclaimed astrologer's cover is blown. Several banned wildlife items like Hatta Jodi, sea fans, seashells and Sial Singhi are seized from the operation. Multiple bank accounts and multiple identities of the so-called astrologer are also seized. The so-called astrologer we caught allegedly has a big network of poachers and traders and has allegedly been doing business internationally, both offline and online. It was also revealed that the suspect was an ex-customs inspector. Since Operation Wildnet, most major e-commerce websites, in coordination with the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, have taken down the listings of Hatta Jodi. This has dealt a big blow to the illegal trade of Hatta Jodi, hopefully a fatal one.
Hello everyone and welcome to Global Talks. This is one of our initiatives we are doing under our projects. And to brief you about Global Shapers Panjim Hub, we are a group of youngsters, youth that was founded by Professor Klaus Schwab in Geneva. It's a branch of World Economic Forum. And our community has more than 7,000 members. It has more than 360 hubs across the world in 171 countries. The Panjim Hub in Goa is relatively new. It's about 6 years old. And the hub has worked on so many different projects related to environment, women's safety, education, and technological advancement, mental and physical health. COVID response was very latest project that we did, even upcycling. You can find us on, if you just Google Global Shapers Panjim Hub, our website. We started the project Global Talks so that we could make sure that expertise from across the world reaches Indian audience, Goan audience, and people who are tuning in from across the world on various subjects which are completely new or they are not talked about enough. And TED Talks and other things do justice to this, but you could interact one-on-one. So today we have with us Vivek Menon sir, who I've had the pleasure to meet in Bird Festival of Goa. And he is India's leading wildlife conservationist. He's an author. He is an environmental commentator, a photographer, and he travels a lot. He is founder of various organizations, mm, including Wildlife Trust of India, which he spearheads, and he's the CEO of the organization, which he built since in 1990s. It is really a pleasure for me to introduce him. He has been the chair of the different organizations such as IUCN's Asian Elephant Specialist Group, Species Survival Commission Steering Committee, and Conservation Translocation Specialist Group. He has been working on wildlife crime for quite some time, which has been recognized globally, and he has won different awards as well, such as the Clark R. Bavin Award, which was in 2019, the latest one. He's very passionate about elephants and working around them. He has authored different books, about 10 wildlife books, one of which I have over here with me, which is Indian Mammals. And it has been really good guide even in Goa, go around and while photographing animals over here. He has tried to bridge the core conservation, policy, business, and biodiversity areas around us. And he serves as one of on various government and non-governmental boards and committees, such as the current Elephant Task Force for the Ministry of Environment and Forest. It is trying to revamp India's elephant conservation strategy. We have a lot of questions which have come in about elephants as well, knowing your work about Wildlife Trust of India, and we'll definitely get to these questions soon. Before which I would like to ask you to continue. We have a suggestion if you can wear earphones, because I think since this is on loudspeaker, my voice is being repeated.
No, I try not to wear headphones. I'll have to find them if I have to wear. Can all of you hear me properly?
Yes, absolutely, we can hear you.
Yeah, brilliant. Then I would like to start, and thank you, Mrinmay, for and Global Shapers for inviting me to this forum of yours. A very exciting new forum. I like to speak to new forums, having spoken more than 30 years to people who are already in conservation. So it's always good not to preach to the converted, but try to address new forums. Also, as you have already in the introduction said, that you met me birding, which is a great passion of mine, and I know something about it. I got my first degrees in ornithology. And you also talked about elephants, which has been a greater passion of mine, and has a bigger body of work that I've done. But you asked me to speak on wildlife crime, and I'm happy you did that. It is for two reasons. One of the reasons is that it is a subject that I devoted about 10 years of my life almost completely to, between 1989 or 1990 to about 1998. And even after which I have been following very closely, and in many capacities have been associated with. However, not as deeply as in the days when I actually went undercover and tried to bust many of the criminal gangs that was shaping India's illegal wildlife crime. The second reason I'm happy to talk about it is, of course, because it is one of the most important wildlife conservation topics. You can talk about saving habitat and giving right of passage to animals, which is one of the biggest work that Wildlife Trust of India does. You can talk about mining and how to have better mining safeguards for our wildlife. You can talk about alternate energy. You can talk about so many things which all affect us. But wildlife crime is a very specialized thing. So I want to deal with that, and I want to quickly go in, without further ado, into my presentation. And I've kept it at a very basic level so that people can understand some bit of it, and then one can always take questions, and or you can get in touch with me if you need to know more. So I'm going to share my screen now.
Go ahead, sir.
And I hope you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Right. Oops. Yes. Right. So, without further ado, as I said, let's come to what wildlife crime is. Because first of the things...
So I think we can still see the Google Meet window.
So I'm sharing the screen. Are you not being able to see the screen?
No, I can see the shared screen, but I can see it in the Google Meet.
Stop sharing and share it once again, sir.
Technology. How's that?
Now we can see it.
Excellent. So, if you can't do something, try again. Right. So let me start straight away and get into the meat of the thing by
Let me interrupt you once more. We'll have to close the document recovery. Then we'll be able to see the entire screen. The document recovery, the tab on the side. No. To your left?
Just go to full screen mode, sir.
No, it still doesn't. You have to close the document recovery.
So which is that?
To your left, where you can see all the smaller tabs of your site. Yeah. To the left of that. And just press close.
No, this is something else.
Where?
Left bottom?
Yes.
Oh, as in, sir, your PPT is showing in that main mode, which is not the presentation mode. It is showing where you can see the...
No. The document, yes, the document recovery has to be closed.
So what is the document recovery? I'm sorry.
The left of your screen, you can see the smaller slides, and then to the left of that, you can see a document recovery where the last document was open. Oh, you can maybe if you stop sharing the screen, that's what you'll see in the presentation then. If you open the presentation once again.
Yes.
Open the presentation.
And then the document recovery, you'll see on the left.
On the left, there is nothing other than the... Oh, okay. All right. Yes. Okay. I need...
Close that.
All right. Done. And now I just share screen again.
Yeah.
Let's try this once more. Sorry, folks, who are... Third time lucky. Righto. Can you see it now?
Absolutely. And now if you make it into a slideshow, we can see it full screen.
You see it now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, friends, thank you for waiting and bearing with that technological glitch. So wildlife crime, as I was telling you, is the taking or trading or exploiting or possessing any wild flora and fauna, which is illegal, which is in contravention of either national laws or international laws. So it includes flora and fauna, a very important definition that people often ask. Okay, and I'll come back to this when we are discussing it in greater detail. And therefore, at least some 5,000 species of animals and about 28,000 species of plants, which are listed in CITES, which means the convention which monitors international trade, not national trade, international trade in wild fauna and flora, CITES, the UN convention. And there are more than 5,000 species of animals and 28,000 species of plants listed. So at least we know that these are species that are involved in wildlife trade, although actual numbers in the trade can be many times this because many species are not listed in CITES. So why is wildlife traded across the world or in India in this case? Okay, I often say, remember the 7 F's. It's very easy for you to remember if you remember the 7 F's. And one or two of them, of course, I've turned the F around so that you can remember it, okay, as a mnemonic. So the very first one is food. And people first started trading any wildlife for food. Tribal communities started it and still do it. So across the world, bushmeat and fish contribute at least 1/5 of the animal protein, and therefore people trade in it, okay? Also, of course, you know that we trade in fruits and mushrooms and nuts and leaves. We think this is normal, but anything that comes from the wild is part of wildlife trade. It may not be illegal. For example, you may eat pine nuts or chironji, which comes from the wild and is not cultivated in most parts of India. It comes from the wild, but it may be legal. However, if you eat bushmeat, like in some places in the Northeast you may still get, it is completely illegal, but it is sold in some parts of India as well. The second is timber, which people don't often take as wildlife crime, and yet it is one of the largest in terms of value and in terms of volume, and perhaps in terms of destruction, because you're talking about an entire habitat which might go. And this includes timbers or gums or resins that you exploit from a forest, which is not planted, but where you're cutting the trees in a forest, and in this case, of course, illegal. The third is pharma. As I said, of course, if you know English language, it's spelled with a PH, but I've turned it into F, and especially traditional medicines. So the very first one I can show you is rhino horn, which, as you know, is a matter of great concern for India. Just for you to guess which is real rhino horn and which is a fake rhino horn, I'm giving you 2 seconds. I'll come back to this slide while I look at the next thing. Meanwhile, you can guess. Okay. The second thing is musk pod. So I'm showing you things that are used in India or go out of India. So musk pod, very much used in Ayurveda and Unani, still illegally. Legal sources of Ayurveda and Unani do not use it, but traditional texts do prescribe it. Also used in traditional Oriental medicine. And this is musk pod, of course, not in India, this is in Japan. And bear bile, yeah. So the Himalayan trade routes of musk and bear bile have both been used for similar purposes. But coming back to rhino horn, just very quickly for you, the one on the right is fake. Okay, the one that looks like a rhino horn is fake. The one that doesn't look like a rhino horn on the left is the actual rhino horn. The one on the right is made out of buffalo horn and very beautifully carved. We'll come back to rhino in a minute. Fuel, and the next one, fodder, which I'm not going to talk much about. But remember that these are things extracted every day from the wild by millions of people. And so we must look upon it as wildlife infringement as well. Another thing that holds people's attention is fashion. Okay, in the old days, people used to use combs made out of turtle shell, hawksbill shell in particular, this hawksbill species, and it's called tortoise shell. Although it's not a tortoise, it's a turtle. And also, in India, in the 90s, we busted what then was an unknown trade in a wool that fashionable women in North India used to wear. It's called shatouche, right? And now everybody knows that shatouche is an illegal commodity. But in those days, nobody knew. People thought it was a form of pashmina. It's a soft shawl till it was proven, and we played a big part in it to show that shatouche comes from the Tibetan antelope, which is illegally killed in China. And or reptile skins, whether it's wallets or or belts or shoes or women's jackets or whatever. A lot of things are used, fashion uses reptile skins even now in the West, some of which is legal in the West. But in India, if you find any, it is completely illegal. Then fun. Unfortunately, still hunting and fishing still comprise a large amount of offtake from the wild. These are pheasant feathers used as fishing floats. Or recently somebody posted a white-throated kingfisher. And these are used in large numbers as fishing floats in Europe and come out of India and Sri Lanka even today, illegally. And or things like falconry, which when I started wildlife in the 90s was still being practiced legally in India. Then it got banned and still was practiced illegally for many years. But even now is a major form of offtake in the Middle East and or Central Asia. Similarly, tiger skin for many, many years was the main reason the tiger was killed. And this was just to hang on your wall for the rich and the famous. And or even if you're not rich and famous, you might still keep things like curios from the sea, often found being sold even today on seashores. And you just keep it in your drawing room. Or you keep up pinned insects in glass cases in drawing rooms, still sold in the Northeast. A lot of this is illegal. Finally, we'll come to folklore and religious uses, or traditional uses. On the right is a hornbill beak, which the Nishis used to wear in Arunachal Pradesh as a traditional way before a young man gets a bride. And this is something that the Wildlife Trust of India worked very hard with the traditional Nishi youth and the Forest Department of Arunachal Pradesh to convert a whole set of Nishis into wearing artificial beaks. Like this one that you see in the picture actually is an artificial beak. And or the thing that you see on the left, which many people won't even recognize. And I'll come back to this later again in the talk. So I will leave it with you and you can try to figure out what it is. Just a way of keeping your interest in the presentation, and I'll come back to this. Okay, so the 8 F's of wildlife trade: food, furniture, farmer, fuel, fodder, fashion, fun, and folklore. If you can remember these 8 F's, these are the Y's. Y is wildlife trade. Now, of this, tiger is something that India has been fascinated by. It is a national animal. It holds a very large proportion of our interest. And for many, many years, we thought it was the tiger skin. And it was in the 90s when I was working with Traffic India. We had formed Traffic India with Ashok Kumar. And when we found the first 2 cases in West Bengal of the skin being left after a poached tiger, tiger was poached, and only the bones were taken, then we realized that the tiger was worth actually more for the bones and was actually primarily being killed for the bones and not the skin. The skin became a side thing. And then we found out that it went for tiger bone wine. It ended up in 1991 with a very massive seizure in Delhi of 400 plus kilos of tiger bone right under our noses, and which exposed the fact that the Oriental medicine, or some people call it the traditional Chinese medicine, but it's really should be called traditional Oriental medicine, was the main reason for the tiger being killed. Okay, so this is still a major threat. The elephant, which I worked on for a long time, and in Asian elephants, you know, only the males have tusks and only some of the males have tusks, and these tusks are used as ivory. Now, I've shown you here a traditional figure which is carved, and this is why elephants were killed in the past, but no longer. In fact, the 65% of the world's trade was that item I showed you in the previous slide. Those were hankos. These ones on the left are hankos, or Japanese or Chinese name seals. Yeah? It's because they can't sign a name in a hieroglyphic script. They use a seal, and these used to be made out of wood and stone and later buffalo horn. And then when they became affluent societies, the Japanese first and then the Chinese started using these. The Japanese call it hankos, the Chinese call it chops. And these are today 60-65% of the reason why elephants are killed. We did talk about rhino horn. In India, we have the greater one-horned rhinoceros, India and Nepal. And it is only a single horn, which is made of keratin or hair, like your nail or your hair. And this is used again in traditional Oriental medicine, not as an aphrodisiac, as many of you think. Yeah, because most of people who speak English never read the Chinese script. They wrote all sorts of fantastic stories and still believe in it. It is used as an antipyretic. It's used like paracetamol or crocin to bring down fever. You can argue that it's a useless use and you can use crocin just as well. And in modern days, that's much better than using rhinohorn. But you can't say it's an aphrodisiac. In traditional Chinese medicine, it was used to treat pains, aches, rheumatism, and fever. Now, lesser known species in the trade are coming up. On the left, you see pangolin scales. And pangolin is fast becoming the most trafficked mammal. And out of India, both the species, the Indian pangolin and the Chinese pangolin, are both being traded in alarming numbers. As a wildlife biologist, as Mrinmai said, I've written the wildlife book of India, the mammals of India, the Indian mammals. And I have not seen a pangolin in the wild more than twice in my 30-odd years of experience of walking the wild. And yet the poachers are finding them every second day and we're getting seizures around the country. Similarly, we recently, a few years ago, my team at the Wildlife Trust of India with the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau of the government broke a major trade in the penis, the hemipenis of monitor lizard, which is used in traditional medicine in Ayurveda and Unani and in traditional Indian medicine. And this is called Hatha Jodi. Okay? And people didn't even know whether it was a herb or it's a plant part or an animal part till we actually broke the trade and told the story. Indian wildlife is used as pets across the country, whether reptiles or birds. A live bird has been traditionally used, all sorts of birds, whether falcons, which I showed you earlier, or cage birds like parakeets, or munia or tota that every northern Indian at least knows, and in fact most of India knows, is still caught illegally. Because all trade in cage birds other than exotic, so other than budgerigas or cockatiels or macaws, even those only with a certificate of import. But any Indian bird, I repeat, including a mitu, including a parakeet, is illegal. Okay. But birds are used, as I told you, for their casks, for their meat, for their body part. The edible nest swiftlet in the Andamans is used for the bird's nest, and all sorts of parts of the birds are used as well. We talked about reptile skins and we talked about vertebrates like butterflies, but what we didn't talk about is one of the largest trades that's going on in live animals today is tarantula, spiders being smuggled out of India for pet traders in Europe and America. Marine animals, whether it is for ornamentation, but also for food and medicinal purposes like sea cucumber, as well as purely medicinal purposes like red coral, going for a prostaglandin that is being extracted and sold. So a large number of our marine life is also under threat and we are not looking at it carefully enough. As well as finally, once again, tree, and I'm giving a specific example, the red sanders growing only in the Chittoor district of Andhra Pradesh is globally in demand, both for its medicinal properties as well as use in some musical instruments in Japan and parts of the Orient. And it is one of the most highly traded non-timber trees going out of India illegally. Recent studies in India, which WTI has carried out, shows that many animals are going out even now. So people think that, oh, everything is banned in India. And indeed, everything is banned, unlike in the US or Europe, where many species are allowed to be traded and many species are not allowed to be traded. In India, other than the crow, the mouse, and the rat, every species is protected. Okay? And as a result, no species can be traded in any which way, either internally or externally. But nevertheless, these recent figures show that trade is continuing, and it is one of the largest marketplaces in terms of social media and in terms of the internet, and it is exploding in India. So people think this is a Western phenomenon, no longer. Yeah, this unregulated, anonymous, unlimited trade is involving not only things that you're keeping at home, as I said, like pets, but also involves ivory or rhino horn or big cats or reptiles or whatever. So all of these tens of thousands of things are being traded on Facebook, on internet, on many platforms on the internet, and we are trying to track each one and make companies on the internet responsible for doing it, and we are getting very good traction on that as well. Without going into great detail, showing you that whether it's WhatsApp or Facebook or Insta or Twitter, you can find these things and you can report it. And I'll come back to that in a second, which is that we have good news that the world is cracking down on it. Yeah, presidents and prime ministers met a few years ago in London to talk about wildlife crime. So it's not just young people like you. Heads of state are talking wildlife crime alone, right? And recently, just now, this week, the IUCN has passed with an overwhelming majority, a motion to implement international efforts to combat sale of illegal wildlife products online. So the whole world is now realizing that online markets is going to be one of the major issues. So how can we work together to stop wildlife crime, especially in India? Yeah, be part of our Wildlife Crime Information Management Network. You can contact the Wildlife Trust of India, and we will put you both in touch with governmental agencies that work, as well as use our own network to be an anonymous cyber spotter. Yeah, we are telling you one simple thing. You can also involve yourself much more dedicatedly and deeply into being part of a conservation profession. But this is something any one of you can do. You can sit at your home and look online and look at your local markets and see what's happening and sign up, and through a proper information channeling system, give us the data which goes into the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau of the Government of India as well. So we are collecting that data for them, really. Okay. So I just wanted to give you one good way of participating. I know I have limited time, so I stopped it at that. I can tell you many stories about each one of these, as ivory or rhino horn or anything else. I would like to do that during my interaction and leave time for that. I hope this has given you enough time to think about and ask questions. Thank you. I'm stopping sharing now.
Yes. Thank you so much for that presentation, sir. We had no clue that so many things are already happening. Sometimes we do live in a little all is well kind of bubble around us, and we never know that such things are happening. So you talked about so many things. Can you tell us what influenced you in the beginning to start this work?
It's a very interesting story. What influenced me was my own illegality. When I was a young child, I was very interested in animals and birds, and I grew up in a family which had no great interest or knowledge in animals or birds. My father was an engineer, very good engineer, and my mother is a doctor, very good doctor, and all top of their fields, but had no interest in animals. We didn't even have many pets, and definitely not the sort of pets I wanted. And so I went out and bought birds. That's what got me into this. I used to buy birds from the bird market in Jama Masjid and keep them and kill them, because nobody was telling me how to look after them. And very soon I found out that the people who were telling me were the ones who were selling it to me, and they were telling me the wrong things. So obviously the bird would end up dead. I would go back and buy more, and that's exactly what they wanted, right? And I'm talking about as a boy of 10 and 12 and 11 and 12 and 13. I used to keep a lot of animals. Birds are the smallest part of it. I used to keep monkeys, I used to keep snakes, I used to keep all sorts of things in the house. And doing this, I realized that there's something terrible happening, that all sorts of animals were coming to that market and they were being traded illegally. So when I got a little older, I wrote a piece. I was not seeing birds out in the wild when I was going for a walk, but I was seeing them in the market. So I wrote a large, or Indian Express then gave me a large piece of a whole spread called "Where Have All the Birds Gone?" And that piece was read by Mr. Ashok Kumar, who wanted to set up traffic in India. And he called me one day and offered me a job, and I was not looking for a job. And I said I had no interest, but we worked together then for the next 30 years. And that's how I got involved in something which became very specialized, which is looking at trade. If that gives you some answer.
Yes, definitely. That is, we all are looking for some kind of inspiration, and it's good that you found that inspiration because you have done such phenomenal work. Can you tell us how the wildlife trade and crime can affect the environment, in which way, and how does it affect us?
It affects biodiversity fundamentally, right? Because it affects the animal that you're taking out. And very traditionally, although there are not very exact figures or numbers for some of this, but very traditionally you say that for every animal or bird that makes the marketplace, 3 to 4 are killed. Okay, so if you keep one bird in your parakeet in your cage, one bird would have died during capture, one bird would have died during transit because they go across the country or across the world, and one bird would have died during sale, and or, as I told you, people doing it wrongly. Similarly, many of the elephants and other things don't end up in the market. They are caught midway. So what ends up in the market represents a small percentage of what actually gets depleted. And every animal and plant that I showed you in CITES means that there has very good documentation that that trade or that crime is affecting the survival of the species. So not just that one individual which has lost its life, but it's going to affect the survival of the species. That's why it's put in CITES. Okay, so clearly it has got a clear impact. So how does it affect us? It affects us because if biodiversity around us goes, then it'll affect us, as you know, whether you're talking about forests or whether you're talking about a particular species. And also it'll affect the fact that even if it doesn't affect you within your lifetime, but it'll affect the fact that your children and your grandchildren are not going to see those species, because these are species that are plucked from nature and are traded in. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sometimes what happens is we ignore what we don't see, so we don't think that this is affecting us. We had interesting questions coming up from people who registered, and so I would like to read out the question by Lakshmi Kantan, which is also something that we wanted to ask.
Okay.
Is deforestation and habitat loss included when we think about wildlife crime and trade? Which you have already answered, but I would like to concentrate on how exactly does it affect, as in, is it taken up as wildlife crime?
Yeah. So number one, mostly it is not taken up. Yeah, I gave you an expert's definition, but in a lay person's definition, it definitely does not form part. Most people don't think of timber or forest produce as wildlife, but it is, because wildlife, according to the Indian Wildlife Protection Act, means just that, wild life. So does your tree have life? Is it wild? Then it's wildlife. If it's in a park, it's not wildlife, right? So if it's a scheduled tree, then it's wildlife under the Forest Act as well. Now, the thing is that if that tree or that felling or that clearance of that area is illegal, then it's wildlife crime. However, just cutting a tree is not wildlife crime. Clearing a forest, if the government has given due permissions, is not wildlife crime. It may be something you may still protest. It may be something that you may still feel upset about, and you may think that the government should not have given that permission. But it's still not wildlife crime. So for it to be wildlife crime, it has to violate laws of the land. Of course, let me correct myself slightly there. The government may also illegally give permission, which the government may violate crime, in which case you can go to court. And if it has violated our laws, then it is crime. Okay, but the fact that trees or vegetation is wildlife is very clear. So the answer is yes, clearing of and deforestation can form very much a part of wildlife crime. Yeah, especially if it is used for any trade or any monetized commercial purpose. Yeah. If I clear undergrowth in my house to plant another undergrowth, it will not form part of wildlife crime, perhaps. But otherwise, it will if you clear a forest.
We had a question on similar lines when you talked about government doing something illegally. And Priyanka Chodankar had asked us, how can governments be held accountable for these things?
Only two ways. One is through the vote. You have just all seen a massive election in one part of the world. Votes can change things, right? And as a democratic country and as citizens, you all hold a vote. And at the right stage, whether locally or for the state or for the nation, you have to use that vote wisely. The vote is rarely used for protecting nature and environment. And I suggest that all of you use that. So that's one way. The other way is to go to court. These are the only two ways to hold a government accountable in the Indian system. In very many other systems, shaming them by going to press and putting names out might also work. In India, I find that has limited use. That it's far more useful in this country, either by changing the system, as I said, through the electoral process and or lobbying, and or by the legal system, which still does work, despite all its slight issues that are there with it. It's still one of the finest systems we have.
it's good if people are aware of these things to make some changes around us. This is about government or something big and untouchable that sometimes one common person cannot do anything about unless they're all together in this. But what about if one person sees a wildlife crime happening, or what can that person do about it?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, all states will have a phone number, as they say, for it. It's an American term of phone number. I don't mean an actual phone number. Only some states have an actual phone number. But when you say a phone number, it means an officer designated. It may be a flying squad, or it could be a wildlife crime cell, which many states have, which theoretically you can report it. These function very well, and many of these don't function very well. So you have to find a second way of doing it. So that is a Wildlife Crime Control Bureau based headquartered in Delhi, but also based across India. In many cities, they have offices, and you can report it to them, right? If that does not also work, there are NGOs that work in the field. Wildlife Trust of India is one of them, and I just gave you the contacts on screen, and we can also share it later through the Global Shapers Forum, and you can contact us, just like there are other NGOs as well who work in this field. And you can contact them. I just named one, Traffic India, which I was involved in founding many years ago. You can contact them. And these are people who will then put you in touch with the right people who can do it. Don't keep always contact somebody and do something about
it. This question was, it came to us from one of the audiences, Srinivas Anandan. He has asked a lot of, that there were some statements about the crime is committed, but unfortunately these things are not implemented when it comes to, after us reporting it, sometimes it's not implemented. And Rasika Kushte had asked, what legal measures are there in India to control wildlife crimes apart from amendments and acts?
Well, the last bit is a bit of a conundrum, because all the legal measures all have to deal with an act. Without an act, apart from it, you can't have any legal measure. All laws are acts. So when you say the word legal, it has to fall under some act. Amendment is an amendment to an act. So amendment is not a thing by itself. Okay. So everything derives from the act. We've got one of the finest acts in the world, the Wildlife Protection Act, 1972, amended many times. Okay. So it's actually a very strong act. For example, I'm telling you, it can give you 3 years in prison for any scheduled one, for the tiger, elephant, or anything like that, right? And many birds, many other things, not just tiger, elephant. 3 years in prison if you are convicted, not only a monetary fine. In most countries, if you kill an animal, it's a monetary fine and you're out. Okay, in India, it's 3 years is compulsory, minimum. And if it's second offense, just now, yesterday, I was involved in something, I'm not giving you the details of, which is second offense, 7 years minimum, if convicted. Okay. Now, the second good news is that when I started my career 30 years ago, there were very few convictions, almost none. The biggest tiger trader of India, Sansar Chand, was out for 18 years or 19 years at that stage on bail, never gone inside. It has changed dramatically. There are lots of convictions. People are going to jail. Okay. So that's the good news, because I've seen it over 30 years. So you may be, as a young person, getting frustrated that this parakeet I saw in Goa is still being sold and it's not happening. But there are many people going to jail on convicted offenses. Yet high names have not gone. True. Yeah, but many others have. So that's one. The third thing is that what your first person said, that implementation is the problem. Of course it is. Just like any other crime, not just wildlife crime, but whether it's rapes or murders or anything, it's not the law. We've got good laws. It's implementation. So which is why I'm saying, as citizenry, join the movement and help make it stronger. I'm giving you as personal example. I'm not just preaching to you. I am a honorary wildlife warden of Delhi for more than 15, 16 years, maybe 20 years. And the reason I became is that I took matters into my own hands and went reporting people, catching hold of people, taking them to the cops, catching hold of people, taking them to wildlife inspectors, making myself such a nuisance that they gave me a badge when I was 19 or 20. And then I was honorary wildlife warden until I was 45 or something. Yeah, because they said that this guy is anyway going to bring in some people here. Might as well make him a warden. So I got powers of arrest officially because I was helping customs, I was helping police, I was helping forest department when I was 19 and 20. So be in touch with the right people, find right officers. There are always right officers in every department. Don't look at, oh, this person is bad. Find the right person and work with them.
Definitely. The wildlife warden that you mentioned, it's also happening in Goa, and I think people from our audience can also get in touch with the forest department. Related to the topic that we were working, Velosa has asked how effective is the role of local forest departments in tackling wildlife crime?
Very mixed, very mixed. Much better than what it was. Yeah, so I'd like to be an optimist. I can see the problems, but I'd like to be an optimist. In 30 odd years, I would say much better. In those days, I used to stand outside the Attorney General's office or a lawyer's office, pleading them to come to a wildlife case, and they'd say, "Ye kutta billi ka case," or not, it was tiger or elephant or something. But they'd say, "Ye koi case thodi hai," where Solicitor General of India appears or Additional Solicitor General appears. Some small chap used to be sent, right? So from that time, a lot has changed. I think there are lots of good people, lots of people are trying. I can see lots of places where it's not working. So those are the states or those are the regions of India where you need a little more push. And I believe in hope, but I believe in systematic work. So if some of you offline, I can advise you if you want. You can email me and I'll tell you what to do, what are the 3 things you can start doing. And hopefully some percentage of you will be successful. All of you won't be successful all the time. You have to learn to deal with that. You're dealing with a system, right? You can't change it all overnight, but slowly.
That is true. The wildlife trade that we are talking about, there is still a lot of demand for such animal products. Even though people know that these things are illegal, ivory, fur, skin, and so many things. So how do you still alter people's impressions about this? How did you come about changing the opinions of nishis, for example?
Yeah, so there are some things which are locally consumed, whether it's traditionally like the nishis and the hornbill, or whether it is fashion conscious North Indian women wearing shatush. Totally different sets of people, right? Both are things we have won. We have won both those. I know there may be a few shatush shawls, but there's nothing like what it was in the 90s, right? When people used to openly flaunt it and wear it. Some of the biggest names in Bollywood used to wear it. Everybody used to say that this is the fashion symbol. All that has changed. That was changed through very high-profile fashion weeks. I have walked the ramp with all Miss Indias and Miss Universes in Lakme India Fashion Week. 4 years in a row, we held a stall, only a conservation organization, Lakme India Fashion Week, because that was a fashion thing. So we used the fashion industry, and we told the fashionable that is not fashion. And at the same time, we did enforcement, right? So there was also strict enforcement, that if you get caught, there's enforcement. There's also a lot of media, and there was this fashion thing. For nishis, we used the nishis, right? And we also gave them an alternate product. The product had to be good. So that product was an alternate beak, which they found did not have the problems of the original beak. They didn't have to go to the forest and hunt a bird. They used to get this made by their own women folk. We trained them. But more importantly, it's a very interesting thing. You have to look at what drives the people's brain. In this case, it was for a young man to find a young girl, right? And we used to take these very nice great hornbill beaks and pied hornbill beaks, and it didn't really work. Then my local boy there said, "Sir, just make it colorful, sir. It's to attract girls." So we made it bright orange, fluorescent. Everybody loved it. Yeah, Arunachal Pradesh became people started wearing bright orange beads. Actual hornbills didn't have such bright colors, but it was something different, and it served the purpose. And the bird was not killed. So you have to look at ways. Conservation is the art of the possible. You have to find the art of what you want, and you can change it. It has to come from within. You cannot sit in Delhi and tell them. So Nishi Indigenous Youth Forum, which is a good organization, took it upon themselves. A good Nishi forest officer took it upon himself, called Tukuloma. So all these people, they will then influence their community from within. You can give ideas, you can give them beaks, you can give them money, but they have to do it. That's a trick.
Absolutely true, sir. The second part of that question was, we know that there is a huge market for exotic pets as well, like you mentioned. And how do you think it's currently being regulated? One of our audience and our previous speakers, Dr. Manoj Borkar, also has asked about captive breeding the pets, and then does it come under wildlife crime?
Yeah, so I told you at the moment, of course, anything which is not allowed by law is wildlife crime, as simple as that. So now if you're talking about India, I mean, each country has different rules. The international thing is different. If you look at India, those birds which are in your schedule, which is in the Wildlife Protection Act schedules, those are not allowed. Okay, you're not allowed any captive breeding or keeping or touching, or most of your birds are on it that you're seeing in the market. There are one or two which are out of it because of ignorance. People don't know. I'm not going to tell you that because tomorrow somebody will start trading in them, but I can tell you that nobody trades in them. Nobody even knows what they are, right? All the known ones are there. So in India, none of those are allowed. However, if you are importing it legally, a bird which is not Indian, which is not in your schedule, which means a budgerigar, which is Australian, or cockatiel, or macaw, which is South American or something, or a grey parrot, which is African, if there is a CITES certificate for import, and if you have a local forest department certificate to allow you to captive breed it, then it is legal. Okay. Unfortunately, when it's in the market, you can't see the tags. Each one is not CITES tagged or CITES ringed. It should be. It isn't. And as a result, it is very easily possible to do a lot of illegality there. And there is a lot of illegality in the captive breeding of exotics. And there's a lot of mixing of Indian stuff, even today, in that. Because a common person may not know the difference between a budgie and a lorikeet. A lorikeet is Indian. A budgie may not be Indian. And people might, use different things and different things. So Indian birds are passed off many times, painted as foreign birds. So all that is there. But all that's completely illegal. So you have to really know and then go and see.
The question Manoj Borkar sir asked actually was about tarantulas. What is its current status, and is there any captive breeding happening with them as well?
No, nothing legal. Nothing legal at all. Illegally, I don't know whether people are breeding them. It's possible. Like, for example, star tortoise is another thing where we thought they were capturing up from the wild. Then we realized that they are captive breeding them illegally because they're all coming out of the same shape and size. So, tarantula, I have not come across a captive breeding facility illegal, but they could be. They are going in very large numbers. They're very endangered. The Western Ghats tarantulas are highly in demand in Europe and US and are extremely endangered. So you have to look after them, especially if you are based out of Goa. You should take particular attention. It's a Western Ghat. Many of them are Western Ghat endemics.
One of our viewers, Karni Singh, has also asked if village institutions help in prevent of such poaching or anything to do with wildlife crime.
100%. Because if you're talking about poaching in forest areas, then it's a nearby community which is the most important. Whether it's elephant poaching or rhino poaching or tiger poaching, unless the local villager shelters that poacher and gives them food or sometimes gives them a gun or sometimes is influenced by these people to lay out poison, they cannot kill. Very, very few things where somebody comes from outside with no help and goes in and kills. That may happen with the rich. A rich person and their friends might drive in a fancy car and go to a place where they know nobody and go and poach and come away, because they have a fancy car and the contacts to get away with it. But apart from that, nobody else will do it. Okay, so local people are critical. And when we are breaking crime, it is by using local people, but even more importantly to protect. So even now in at least 6-7 parts of the country in Wildlife Trust of India projects, we have village protection squads. They are the most important primary response for anti-poaching. As well as to stop conflict and other wildlife issues also, they are the most important. But for anti-poaching also, they are the most important. If the local people say nothing doing here, again, not names, one of our most famous film stars was caught, not convicted yet, but caught because of local people. Because the Bishnois there said that animal you killed is more important than our child. If that local community was not that committed, that person would never have been caught and never have had to face so many years of litigation. Different matter that he has not been convicted. But still the case is going on.
I hope it also answers Velasa's question, which she had asked about your experience on how it has been, wildlife crime has been tackled by creating awareness among locals. Going to our next question, which is relevant to our current COVID crisis, while it has been linked to wildlife trade and the zoonotic diseases such as the COVID-19, and were there any reports that it originated in the, actually there were reports that it originated in the wet markets of China? Do you think such markets should be shut down, or how should it impact the wildlife trade?
So there's a lot of misinformation about this also, and I've been thinking for a long time to write my book on it. I should, because I did a lot of trade in the wet markets of China and in other places in the 90s. So I know it reasonably intimately. So wet market should not be shut down. Wet market you have in all your cities. In Goa, you can't buy fish if you don't go to a wet market. Yeah, if you shut down, so wet market just means that a fish market is a wet market. A chicken market where live chicken is sold is a wet market. So you can't shut down wet markets unless the whole world is turning vegetarian tomorrow, right? So wet market is doesn't mean any of this thing. This fact that Chinese wet markets are all illegal is also bullshit. A lot of them supply legitimate goods to communities, and so I will not say shut down wet markets at all. You should shut down illegal wildlife in those wet markets. Now, in China, many wildlife is legal too, so that's a different issue. Yeah. Luckily, after this COVID, they themselves have prohibited sale of wildlife in these markets, and that's good. Yeah. But sitting here, you cannot also generically say that people should not do what they think is legal. Every country has a democratic framework, and they have to take their own decisions. You can tell them, but you cannot take the decisions for them. What is a major issue in COVID or anything else is the transport of exotic animals from different parts to different parts and eating them or selling them there for food, especially in food markets, because that's where it spreads, but also in pet markets. So if you are taking pangolins from India and Southeast Asia into China, not from there, and you're eating it there and selling it in an open market there and killing it in the open market there with its blood and guts on this thing, there's an issue. And that is happening in China. It's also happening in parts of India. It's also happening in many other parts of Southeast Asia. Yeah, people like blaming China, but they all love Thailand and go to Thailand. It happens in Thailand all the time. Yeah, it happens in Vietnam all the time. Yeah, so it happens in many parts. If that's illegal, it must be clamped down. More importantly, many things which may be legal, we have to campaign and in a policy sense, make people understand that some of this may be legal in your country, but it's time that you rethink your laws. And that's exactly what the US and Europe put a lot of pressure during the Obama years, especially in the US, to make China actually think on many of the things, including ivory trade, which China proactively reacted to. And then after COVID now, I believe they're proactively reacting to their live animal trade also. May not be to all our satisfaction, but I think they've done quite a bit. One good thing about China, and everybody loves China bashing, but one good thing about China is once they decide, they are far more efficient than us. So I have seen good implementations there, much better than India. So let us tell them, tell the world what we want, and let's look at ourselves also.
Absolutely. So this was a question from one of our participants, Anukriti Shaw, and she was wondering about bat killings which happened because they spread COVID-19, thinking about that, and there was a rampant killing of bats. And she had asked how we can better act on reducing this sort of action from people, which you answered really well.
Yeah. So with human, contact, please tell people bats do not spread COVID. Okay. A particular bat may have released a particular virus when it was transported from a different country to a different country and used for a different purpose. But a bat living in that environment will never shed that virus, so you don't need to worry about
it. Speaking about the changes in policy, Ninoshka has asked a question. What do you think about the current, the new EIA? And do you think it will make it easier for the current illegal poachers, or will it will it have no effect on them at all? Or how do you think it is going to work?
Look, there are two parts to this question. Will it have effect on poaching and poachers? Probably not. The EIA is an instrument for allowing projects, environmental impact assessment of developmental projects, or any project actually, which diverts either from that or has an impact on it. Does not really deal with most of wildlife. Now, you could technically say that the clearance of forest can be precipitated by that, but 99% I would think an EIA would deal with clearing it for, say, a train track or a dam or a mine, not for trading that part which is cleared. That's not the primary purpose of it. The primary purpose of it is that. You ask me, what are my views? I've given it in writing to the Ministry of Environment and others, that I think the current EIA has lots of issues. lots of issues in it, and must be addressed, and the government should strictly amend it. Some of the clauses are fine, so I'm not one of the people who say that any amendment of the EIA is bad. That's not right. If you study clause by clause, some of the clauses the government has proposed are perfectly all right, but a lot of clauses have a lot of issues, and we've given it in writing also, and I hope they'll amend it. So that it'll be disastrous for the environment if passed in the way it is. May not be for wildlife crime.
Something on the similar lines, Yaduprabha had asked a question. Do you think infrastructure development and such kind of preservation of any biodiversity go hand in hand to preserve the flora or fauna of any place?
No, it must go hand in hand. Do the best that you can do. The fact that you're born, the fact that there's human species on this planet, you are going to put some pressure. The fact that I'm talking to you, some internet cable would have been laid somewhere. Something would have been lost. So let's be pragmatic to the extent of saying that our lives is a footprint, just like the butterfly's life is also a footprint. Ours is a much bigger footprint. Everybody's having a footprint. And this is not, if we were not there, or if we didn't do any roads or railways, much better. No doubt about it. But that's not going to happen. That's not the way we are. So what can we do? We can lessen the impact. We can see what is not needed. So if, as I told you, if citizenry can come up together and say, I'll give you the vote, don't build this road. I've never heard anybody say that, or I have not heard a majority of people say that, right? If you say that, wonderful. I have been part of a parliamentary committee which went to Greece of young parliamentarians, and I was trying to give them some orientation there, where the young parliamentarian from Greece actually had shut down entire roads in the whole district. Because the people of Greece at that stage, in that mountain district, said that no roads. And they vote only if there's no roads. Now, either you do that, or otherwise, now what we are doing, for example, with elephants, is we have convinced the National Highway Authority to at least have a generic policy which has gone out that any infrastructure project from national highways will have an overpass or underpass, or will have to consider wildlife passages. And after that thing, Ministry of Environment and Forest has also given a thing that no new thing will be cleared under. So here's one victory, that you have now got policy and a thing that everything has to have an overpass. Now you can say, but they'll build it in the wrong place, but they'll make it smaller, but they will not make 5 instead of 6. Sure, this is where all of us have to campaign, lobby, talk to people, and make sure that the right thing gets done.
Apart from politics, there are a lot of religious and cultural beliefs which are then harming wildlife as well, like elephants and reptiles, horses are kept for these things. How do there is definitely a ban on this, but how do you think this can be implemented? On what legal steps can be taken to ensure this doesn't happen?
There's a ban on many things. There's a ban on catching wild birds and freeing them, thinking that your sins will go. But they do it, still do it. A lot of people do it. A lot of those birds are domestic pigeons. So it doesn't matter in terms of wildlife. It will still matter in terms of city and lots of other issues, but it doesn't matter in terms of wildlife. Lots of those birds that they're free may be wild birds. And they're completely wrong. It's a religious thing, and we have to look at it, and we have to, educate people. Feeding monkeys. You said everything is banned. No, it's not banned. They still feed monkeys on Tuesday saying Hanumanji, and on Wednesday that same monkey will break a windshield wiper, and everybody will want it to be thrown away out of the urban area into forest, right? That's a wildlife management issue, not wildlife crime, but a wildlife management issue born out of a wrong feeling that you have to feed wildlife. You must not feed wildlife, as much as possible. But there are things, you just mentioned elephants. That is not banned. Captive elephants is not banned. Whether you like it or not, it's not banned. And keeping them in temples is not banned. There are some rules governing it of how and what the welfare conditions are, but it's not banned. And when I was part of the elephant task force that you mentioned some years ago, I had recommended that eventually as a society, we have to go towards a time when we don't need to keep elephants in temples or churches or mosques. I come from Kerala. Lots of people criticize me saying, how can you as a Malayali say this? But I said it. That I'm not saying it should go out tomorrow, because no religious thing can immediately go out. But we have to find alternatives. We can't, in the name of religion, torture elephants or make more endangered or any animal. Either the welfare or the conservation, we have to look at both and we have to evolve. After all, traditional practices, India has had sati, traditional practice of India. We as a society said we don't want it, and we as a society evolved against it. So similarly, the society has to evolve against some of these practices. That's all.
This was a question from one of our participants, Loretta. And then coming to society and empowering them, we had questions from one of the veterinary officers, Dr. Somesh Kumar, who registered for the event. He has asked, what is the responsibility of a wildlife veterinary officer in such cases? And there is also a question from Ishwar asking, what is the role of wildlife researcher in tackling wildlife crime?
So are you talking about wildlife veterinary officer as those employed by the state, or are you just talking about somebody who's trained in wildlife? I mean, for example, I employ a number of wildlife veterinarians, wildlife veterinary officers of the state, the wildlife veterinary officers who work in the Wildlife Trust of India. So, I mean, if you're a wildlife veterinarian, which today is a specialized science, in the early days only 1 or 2 colleges offered that, but now many colleges are in wildlife. Then you can either work in the forest department through deputation from the animal husbandry department, which I believe is the parent department of veterinarians, and or you can work for NGOs like us. Not huge number of posts, but whatever there are a number of NGOs who are doing. But your job is largely in caring for wildlife. So in wildlife crime, it'll depend on the wildlife that's confiscated. A lot of our confiscated wildlife do not get properly looked after. So number one, a large number of them die because the people confiscating them do not know to look after. So if you're a wildlife veterinarian, you have to have a very key role in the upkeep of these animals. And you have an even more important role in advising release. Because unless the attendant doctor advises, they should not release it. And in most cases, they should not release it at the place procedure. You have to determine where it's from, you have to determine genetics, you have to determine disease, you have to determine behavior, so many things. So the IUCN guideline for placement of confiscated animals and the IUCN guideline for translocation must be used. That takes time. No enforcement agency has time. They want to get rid of these animals they're eating. The customs don't want tortoises eating cabbages in the customs part. So they'll say, "Jaldi jaake isko chhod do." Yeah, I may be unfairly blaming the customs. I'm not saying customs. Any enforcement agency, they don't like live animals. They want to get rid of them fast. Doctors' job to save their lives as well as ensure that they're properly released. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. Researchers research the wildlife trade. I mean, very few people are researching trade. They're researching wildlife conservation issues, but how many good scientific papers or publications are there on trade? Some of them authored by me. So may I see some more? Are the youngsters doing it? I don't think so. After my reports on ivory and rhino horn, I have not seen a single report on ivory and rhino horn coming out of India in 20 years. Where is it going? Who's collecting it? What is the money being got by them? What is the trade routes? Those sort of things are important for researchers to also look at.
We have questions from Sahil Chokshi and Velosa, how we can involve.
Are you not running out of time, Manmay?
We have about 10 more minutes, so I'm coming to the last part of this.
No problem.
So how we can take up or involve the youth in the current situation of wildlife crime, and how can we get such information as in in our education system and convince our schools to include the Wildlife Protection Act in teaching? How do you think that can happen and inspire youth of today to take action?
Second part is interesting. I haven't given it that much thought, but it really must be. You're right. The first part is I've answered of how you. I've given you one option at least of contacting us or contacting the department. I've even given you an email of doing that when you are seeing something happening. To begin with, somebody can advise you: is it wildlife crime at all or not? Many things you may see may not be crime. You may think it is crime because you may think emotionally that this has to be saved, but is it illegal or not? And then if it is, somebody can guide you or putting you in the same thing. You can also take part in campaigns. For example, mongoose hairbrush. It's things which are publicly used. It's not rhino horn. It's not used by the syndicate. It's used by every school child. And if it's mongoose hairbrush and it's illegal, we can easily show you how to differentiate mongoose hairbrush from other hairbrush, and you can go around to schools and campaign that don't at least paint, let's save the earth using an illegal hairbrush. Yeah. So how can, because these are normally children's hairbrushes, so it's normally used by schools or children at school level. So you can do that. So those sort of. The other one of making it a part of the curriculum, there are lots of things that have been made part of the curriculum, but I don't think the Wildlife Protection Act itself has been made. What you're saying is that some aspects of that act, obviously the act itself should be taught to lawyers, it should not be taught to children. But yeah, some aspects of what is legal and illegal should be part of the curriculum. And it's a good idea. I'll look into it myself and see how we can include it.
So coming to the end almost, my second last question to you would be, what are the challenges that you're facing in your work?
There are hundreds of challenges, there are hundreds of good days also. I keep saying in conservation, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays are good days, and Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays are bad days, and Sundays, it depends on how you get up out of bed. So there's no answer. There's challenge in everything you do in life. So like that, every day morning, there'll be something that goes right and something that goes wrong. And as I said, conservation, I told you, is the art of the possible. So you have to be optimistic. One of the things I'm telling you, if most of you are young, I don't know the age profile of those who are tuned in, but I'm presuming, being global shapers, you're young. Then sometimes when I talk to you, I sense a pessimism. And I'm amazed. We should be pessimistic after seeing lots of things and, cynical, and we shouldn't be. I think when we are pessimistic, we should retire, right? But you must be the most optimistic lot if you're young. So that's key. So what are the challenges I face? It can be anything. But the point is that if you're optimistic, you'll find a solution. And then be rational and pragmatic and find a solution and implement it. And you'll find your ways better. That's not just for conservation, it's for life.
What would you advise today's youth who are interested in taking up conservation or who are interested in anything related to wildlife conservation?
Act. Don't just beat your chest and say this is dying and that is dying and we are left with something. Just do something. Anything you do. Yeah. So you can do it like I told you of a citizen sharing an information, or you can take part in a campaign, or you can become a professional yourself. You don't need everybody to be a professional. Some people can become and devote your life to it. But a lot of you can do whatever you want to do in life, but just do this on the side. Do a little bit. Be a little watchdog for wildlife and be a little supporter of wildlife. The rich can donate. So you can do something, but do something. That's why the thing that Wildlife Trust of India also does is conservation action. We started the first MSc course, by the way, with Bharatiya Vidyapeeth in Pune on conservation action. We are the first organization, and Bharatiya Vidyapeeth is the first university to offer a master's in conservation action. Today, now there are 20-25 children doing it every year. Please join that if you want a career. One of the options, I'm not saying that's the only option, but that's something which doesn't even say that it needs a science degree or anything like that. Yeah. It is for action. So you'll be trained in an overall thing. Conservation is not only about science. Science is a very important part of it, but you can do campaigns, you can do finance, you can do fundraising, you can do so many ways to help. You can do politics, you can do law. So you can do all that.
Thank you so much, sir. I think everyone who has tuned in, or whatever age group they may be, will definitely able to act. That's such a simple message. And I would like to take up this time to thank everyone who has joined us. As an audience, you are very important to us. Thank you for registering, and definitely tune in to our next sessions as well. We have really interesting people coming up. Thank you, Vivek sir, so much for taking out this time and inspiring every one of us, telling us the truth about everything that's happening around the world and giving a positive message along with it as well. Thank you, Wildlife Trust of India, for making sure sir is with us and partnering with us for this entire event. I would like to thank my team as well, Ninoshka, Melissa, even Sushruth, who is our technical support today. Thank you so much, everyone who has joined in. I have already messaged the contact there in the chat, as well as it will a slide will appear at the end of the talk. Please feel free to contact anyone around you who is related to wildlife crime or who is doing any kind of work. There are lots of NGOs. If you have tuned in with us previously for Wildlife Week, we have partnered with different NGOs who are currently working in Goa. Wildlife Trust of India is one of them, and you can definitely contact them. Please feel free to message on the, you have the contacts on your screen. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.